Good morning and welcome to Rising. I'm haunted by how great today's show is, and I'm happy to have Batya Ungar-Sargon back with us today. Hello, Batya.
Hi, Robby. Thanks for having me.
Do you have an enjoyable, well, today is Halloween. I'm a little Halloweened out because I had a lot of Halloween activities to do over this weekend. How about you? Any Halloween-related fun?
I can't say I'm a big Halloween person, no. But, we'll see. Hopefully I won't get too scared by all the kids coming, knocking on the door tonight.
All right, sounds good. Well, last night it was decided that Lula da Silva will be Brazil's next president after voters delivered a tight victory to the leftist over the right-wing incumbent, Jair Bolsonaro. Bolsonaro has yet to concede, even though Brazil's electoral court declared Lula the winner with 50.9% of the vote over Bolsonaro's 49.1%. And we'll continue to provide coverage of that story as it develops over the week. But first, Paul Pelosi, husband to Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, is expected to fully recover from skull, arm, and hand surgery he underwent last Friday after he was allegedly beaten by an intruder with a hammer in the couple's San Francisco home.
Yeah, according to officials, police were dispatched to the Pelosi residence around 2:30 a.m. for a priority well-being check when they found a 42-year-old man, now identified as David DePape, and Paul Pelosi both holding a hammer. According to police, DePape pulled the hammer away from Mr. Pelosi and, quote, violently assaulted him with it. Now, Nancy Pelosi was in Washington, D.C. at the time and not home. However, according to a source briefed on the matter, the suspect was looking for the House Speaker and shouted, "Where is Nancy?" before assaulting her husband.
According to Rolling Stone, DePape maintained a personal blog where he dedicated writings to beliefs shared by the QAnon movement, including Holocaust denial, climate change denial, voter fraud, conspiracy theories, Second Amendment absolutism, screeds against groomers and pedos. The blog has since been taken down. The alleged attack on Paul Pelosi has Democrats across the country sounding the alarm bells on threats of violence against elected officials. Congresswoman Debbie Dingell told Axios last week, quote, "Somebody is going to die." So obviously this is a very disturbing incident. I think most people are disturbed by how easy it appears to be that this man was able to get into, the private residence of the third most powerful political figure in the country. Sounds terrifying for Mr. Pelosi, and we wish him a speedy recovery, of course. What do you make, Batya, of the kind of, conversation around this incident? Because it seems like, there's a lot of, well, first of all, we need to know more from an investigatory standpoint for how this all happened, et cetera. We're talking about motive, right? The police are still exploring motive. It looks to me, he is clearly a crazy person. We're finding more of his history of kind of crazy behavior. Homeless, has this blog or, political ramblings, all that. So I think it's going to end up being a case where of course, there is a tangible political motive because that's what he's articulating, but also, he's kind of psychotic, and then this political lens is how his psychosis is being filtered in the same way as like a Jared Lee Lofter or something like that.
So I guess I feel a little bit more skeptical of the political angle of this than you are. It seems to me like there's sort of three camps have emerged in the conversation around this. There's the kind of Democratic political media machine version of the story in which this is a direct result of Republican rhetoric. This is a direct result of Republicans criticizing Nancy Pelosi. Apparently now that's not allowed anymore. That this person is a completely normal Republican, mainstream Republican, right? Acting out on the orders of mainstream political Republicans, right? That's kind of the liberal left-wing version of what happened here. Then there's a kind of middle ground version where people are pointing out that this person has a history of excessive drug use, possibly mental illness, that the story itself, he seems to be acting in a way that is obviously, at least colored by some kind of mental illness, and that this is an example not of, Republican political rhetoric, but of the kind of mental illness that's going untreated in cities across America. And then you have the kind of third camp, the conspiratorial right, that is asking questions based on, some things that actually don't make a lot of sense about the narrative we've been given, but sort of pushing a conspiracy theory in which, this was not a mentally ill person, this was not political at all, but it was something else completely. And that has been fueled by the changing story coming out of the San Francisco Police Department, in which, there's certain things, like first they said there was a third person there, now they're saying there wasn't a third person there, things like that are sort of changing about the story. So, and it seems to me that, I feel like the most reasonable explanation, of course, yes, I want to see the video of what happened, I'm waiting to hear more, but to me, I think the middle ground seems like the most reasonable explanation. Like, this person's clearly mentally ill. I've heard versions that he said, "Where's Nancy?" and then versions that he said, "I'm going to wait for Nancy," which is, of course, very different than, entering with a hammer and saying, "Where's Nancy?" Also, the police did initially say the hammer was Paul Pelosi's. To me, the most salient thing about this story is just the total different standard for elites, for the rich, and for lawmakers than there are for regular Americans. Regular working class Americans, poor Americans, Black Americans are routinely victimized by incidents exactly like this across their neighborhoods, across cities in America, across rural America. This is happening everywhere. And yet the progressives who are now charging this man with attempted homicide are routinely telling us, no, we need to have more sympathy for the mentally ill. We have to have more sympathy for drug addicts. We have to have more sympathy for the homeless. Let them back into the neighborhoods. Close Rikers. They're always trying to get this exact kind of person back into the neighborhoods when the people they're victimizing are poor or Black or working class. And when it comes to somebody rich or somebody part of the Democratic Party, they're throwing the book at him, attempted homicide for wrestling over a hammer. Now, I don't, maybe attempted homicide, maybe they will be able to indict him on that. Maybe a jury will find that compelling. I don't know. I don't have any of the evidence before me. But the difference in the standard here, it is impossible to imagine that if a mentally ill person attacked a New Yorker on a subway with a hammer, that Alvin Bragg would be pursuing attempted homicide. That is just impossible to imagine. He tried to decriminalize illegal gun possession. So to me, that is the story right now, before we have any more information. It's just the utter hypocrisy from progressive elites when it comes to crime.
And we're going to talk more about the conspiratorial angle a little bit later in the show when we talk about Elon Musk and what he tweeted about that. So we are going to tackle that in a later block, which, I think that is that stuff being quite ridiculous, because we you can accept when there are obvious explanations jumping out at you, like that this person is insane, like you can accept that. You don't have to, well, what was he doing there? Well, he read his writing. He's a crazy person. And you're exactly right, Batya, that people who live in cities and have seen the urban decay around us and have seen tent cities appear and drug addiction and homelessness and psychotic, people shaking with knives in the street, like people encountering those things, you understand this kind of person and that they're out there and that this is a huge problem that we have to deal with, that people are dealing with, and that the law enforcement and local leaders have been totally unable to bring under control, and then it spills out into this broader awareness when you have instances like this where one of those people ends up tangling with the rich and powerful. So I think that's a really good point. And there's been wall to wall liberal mainstream coverage of this, as talking about it as like some direct result of the extremist rhetoric, dangerous rhetoric from Republicans. So it definitely, them trying to make it be about that rather than about this, horrible problem we have of homeless, drug addicted, deeply suffering from psychosis kinds of individuals, which I think it's not ethical to just like leave them out there to this kind of fate. Nor is it good for everyone else, for the bystanders, for the people who live in areas where this kind of thing has taken over. So we'll be, like we said, continue to cover this later in the show, and I'll tell you what's on my radar right after this.